So it's obvious that the AMAX and the FFAR are absolutely ruling Verdansk in Warzone, but I want to suggest something a little different, something that's like the Walmart version of the AMAX, and actually that kind of competes with the FFAR. This is the Cold War AK47 in its current setup. This loadout really competes with a lot of things, but first we're going to look at the most standard loadouts over the history of Warzone, which is the Grau and the M4. You see these two end up having a fairly high TTK, especially for the current meta, especially when you compare that to what's next. So the M4 definitely outweighs the Grau as far as TTK goes, but when you add the AMAX in, it's not even a comparison. The AMAX is obviously worth using over those guns, other than the 60 round mags that those two 5.56 guns come in. But once you throw the Cold War AK47 into the mix, you see things really start to change, and the Cold War AK has leg up on really both of these guns, so it knocks both of these out of the running in my mind. So that brings us to the current king of the street, which is the FFAR and the AK47. Look how comparable these actually are, especially when we start looking at the individual stats per gun, which let's take a look at that before we get a whole. So what's curious about this is the AK47 actually is using the Solo Zero thermal optic, which is one of the slowest optics to shoulder because they do not have magazine data right now for this gun. That being said, it's still in line with the FFAR, so theoretically, if it is only a 10% hit, it might actually be a faster ADS than the FFAR and put it in a very good position against those guns. And really at this point, I'm just really driving the point home. The Grau against the FFAR, it's like a half-second time to kill difference, and then even more than that further out at range. So really the Grau just is not worth using as statistically goes. So the first little bit we're going to look at here is 20 meters back, which is a pretty standard engagement, and just letting the gun do its thing with its recoil. Notice the AK has a really weird shuffle that it does about mid-magazine, as where the FFAR, you will see, just kind of has really nice vertical recoil, which is super easy to control with a controller or a mouse if you're a keyboard mouse player. But let's walk up and look a little closer. Okay, and then repeat at 10 meters, do the same thing. I was going to cut this out, but I'm going to let this run. There's something I want you to see here, is with the FFAR, when I picked it up, I did have a lag spike, and you'll notice that lag spike where my packet latency hit really hard, the gun had no recoil. So I don't know if this is being used in some possible way, but just keep that in mind. This, however, is a more realistic one. I ran two again just to make sure that that's what that was. And again, you see the difference in the AK, the FFAR, and the FFAR with network lasering, I guess. So next up was 5 meters away with the hip fire, just because. You see the spread is all over the place, the bullets just all over. Not something you'd ever do, obviously. You're going to try to control the head as you shoot, but the FFAR, here we go. Again, you see very, very widespread on some of those bullets. It is a little better than the AK in the vertical as far as that goes, so there is that, but they were still all over the place, just about as wide. Okay, now we're going to back off about 20 meters again and do a fairly controlled burst. So this is just laying into it, and you'll notice the AK has a very sharp dive down. I corrected the mouse going back up. That sharp dive is when it stops recoiling, basically when it has that like 10 shots in the center before it starts moving back up. There are people that are better with the FFAR than I am. I'm totally honest with that, but look at my shots with the AK and how just stacked those bullets actually are at that distance. Speaking of distance, 45 meters is the distance that I chose for the long shot with these, because let's be honest, if you're going to take an engagement, it's probably going to be about 40-45 meters when you're pushing a building that you're going to be taking those shots. Any further than that, you're using AUG M16, FR556. So let's walk up and check these out, but man, if I am honest, the AK-47, again, gets my vote for what I would use. Even those couple of stray bullets, you see there's a couple strays off to the left of the FFAR. Anyway, I feel like that's more body shots. And before we swap guns over to the AMAX and the AK, let's check out a really quick controlled hip fire. I would say the AK wins. So at this point, we're fairly familiar with the AK47, right? So we're going to skip that and just go straight to the AMAX, and you will see this thing is a freaking laser with the detriment of 45 round magazine instead of the 60 round mag that you can get with the AK. But the recoil difference is just night and day. I mean, it's like half. Okay, now back off to the 20 for the controlled recoil shots. And the AMAX is, man, the thing is just a laser. You see, AK, you'll always have those couple of extra shots on the foot, basically. Especially because that recoil just does its weirdness. And then back off to the 45 meters for this test. Pretty freaking just no drama. And because I do use the AMAX fairly often, I would call these about the same. The AMAX has got probably a 20 or 15% edge as far as bullets on target. But again, we're talking 45 rounds against 60 rounds. So that is a consideration, especially in like quads or trios. And we backed off to 5 meters for this test with the two guns, hip fire, controlled recoil. The AMAX definitely has, again, a little bit of advantage with most of the bullets being directly in the center. If you see that, there's a pretty good X there. And finally, now that you're really familiar with these recoil patterns, I want to show you something with mounted up and why you should always do it when you have the option. Check out how tight these bullets are tucked in together without trying to manage the recoil. This is just letting it free go, man. And it's still stacking it in there. So if I tried it all, everyone's bullets can hit. If you like this video, give it a like. If you like me, give me a subscribe. Have a good one, guys, and I will see you on Discord in the link in the description down below.